Here's a radio I picked up at the flea market today, probably a late 50s Arvin twin speaker AM tube radio in a turquoise plastic case. You don't really see these colored radios very often, and when I say colored I mean ones besides black or white or brown, and when the colored ones do show up they usually want a premium price for them. So when this one showed up for under 20 bucks, I jumped on it. It needs to be cleaned up, has a few little scratches and whatnot in the case, but no cracks or no pieces busted out. Have no idea what this thing does, so let's turn it on and see if it works or blows up. Let it warm up a minute. Okay, it sounds like we have a bad electrolytic capacitor. No surprise there. And no reception. So let's open this joker up and see if we can determine what is going on with it. Okay, here's the chassis. And the first order of business is to get rid of that nasty electrolytic filter capacitor hum. So we'll go ahead and replace that capacitor now. Besides that, I really don't see any other capacitors that need attention. Everything else is either ceramic disc or we have a couplet back here for the audio circuit. So, like I said, this multi-section electrolytic is really the only one we have to worry about. Okay, here we are with the filter capacitors replaced and powered up. And we got rid of that nasty hum, but we still have no reception. I mean, oh dear, what could the matter be? I mean, all these guys that talk about all you have to do is replace the capacitors in these old sets and they'll just spring back to life. I mean, what could be going on here? Well, this just once again proves that capacitors are not the be-all, end-all. So, let's determine what's wrong with this set. I'm betting it's in the audio circuit, because all we're getting is a very low-level hum, no matter the volume control setting. Okay, we'll now make some voltage measurements, starting at the 50C5 audio output tube. I'll measure the plate voltage, screen grid voltage, cathode voltage, and control grid voltage. And I'll report back when I find something that doesn't look right. Okay, the audio trouble turned out to be a cold solder joint on the cathode pin of the audio output tube socket. And I don't know how well it's showing up on the camera, but the circuit board is kind of crusty under the output tube and the rectifier tube, the two hottest tubes in the set. And that's a reason why I really don't think tubes and PC boards should be in the same enclosure. Well, we now have audio now. And when I first fired it up, it sounded like we were trying to get some reception, but then that went away, probably due to other bad solder connections here. Okay, we actually are getting a little reception with the volume turned all the way up. But as you can hear, it's not nearly what it should be. Okay, what's happening is at power up, it's coming in strong, and then after about 5 seconds it fades out to nothing, which I will demonstrate when the set warms up.
There's no Supreme Court ruling. In other words, there's no precedent binding him to do this. He is electing to do.
Yeah, you can hear what's going on there. Now, that could be caused by any stage of the radio.
He wants to get reelected.
Now, our job is to find out what stage is causing the problem and correct it. Unfortunately, I believe our first IF transformer is the culprit due to the failing silver mica capacitors. When it works, when you turn it on and everything's fine, we have a negative voltage at the control grid of the IF amplifier tube. but the second things start acting up, this voltage goes positive, and I start getting the little bit of a static effect, like when these capacitors fail. I'll see if I can demonstrate that. Okay, it's going to be kind of fun, but pay attention to the meter as it warms up. See a negative voltage.
In Cornelia, Georgia.
You see what it does once it starts acting up? It starts going positive on us. And the longer it stays on, the voltage goes more positive. So, I believe an IF transformer rebuild is in our future here. And once you get the IF transformer out and have everything exposed, you really need to determine what value the capacitors are, and that information is usually not given in the schematic. A lot of guys go with 100 picofarad for the standard value, but I've determined that the actual value of the capacitor can vary greatly. So what I have done here, I carefully disconnected one side of the winding, and then I've measured our capacitance across the capacitor with the winding disc, and I'm getting about 146 picofarads, so we'll have to order a couple of capacitors that are as close to that value as possible. Okay, I've disabled the internal mica capacitors, and we almost had an accident because the whole base broke as I was trying to take it apart, so super glue came in handy here. Now we'll put it all back together and mount the outboard capacitors and hope it works. And here are the capacitors in place. We didn't have 140 whatever picofarad, but we had 100 picofarad and a 47 picofarad, so we just paralleled the two values together to give us around 150 picofarads, so that should work just as well. Not the neatest thing in the world, but since these IF transformers are no longer made and new old stock ones often develop the same problems, this is likely going to be our only option to fix these things. Well, I shouldn't say that until we plug it up and make sure it actually works.
Business that I gave you about job growth, which is obvious.
Well, I guess I did something right.
I want to own a
playing.
computer.
Well, the most compelling time. The idea
it's been on about 30 minutes and no fade out or static, so I guess that problem's taken care of.
Another person typing at another
Now,
computer.
I imagine your next question is going to be, are you going to do the second IF transformer? Well, the answer is no. As long as the silver doesn't decide to migrate, we're going to leave it alone.
Cannot tell that.
And I thought for being on the road, first time playing at dusk in this park.
Thank you to everyone.
So I guess all that's left is to replace the burned out dial bulb, which I don't have. It's one of those goofy types. And touch up the alignment, and this thing should be ready to go. And here's the dial bulb. I don't remember the number right offhand. I know GE used this same bulb in many of their radios from the same time period. And I believe this is a 1960 model here, in case I forgot to mention it earlier, judging by date codes I found on the tubes. Okay, we have the signal generator connected to the control grid of the mixer tube. Signal generator set to the IF frequency of 455 kilocycles. We have our output, just barely enough to produce a usable signal. And yes, this thing is out of alignment, because whenever hear that? So it's not, the IF in this radio is currently not tuned to 455 kilocycles. Now we'll take our diddle stick and tune the cores of the IF transformers for maximum output. There's that one. Oh yeah. Cut the input down, or should I say the output of the signal generator. And that looks like that about does it. And I also peeked out the oscillator and RF trimmer on the tuning capacitor, which really wasn't that bad off. It was, the only thing really that off was the IF transformer that I rebuilt.
Time Gospel Radio, playing all your gospel favorites.
Primary candidate.
This is interesting, an AM station playing Led Zeppelin. I'm going to have to listen to this for a while and see where it's coming from. Okay, this is some Spanish-speaking station, likely out of Mexico or Cuba.
University law professor.
Okay,
and for
here we go. That ought to do it.
Delinquents are walking up killing people. And
Yeah, we don't want a juvenile.
The juvenile detention center is y'all's.
I attempted to find this bulb on the sites, the mail order sites that cater to the antique radio community, and this bulb was not listed. So I went down to the local parts house, and they were like, "Oh, if you need to have the number. If you don't have the number, we can't help you." Well, no, I don't have the number. All I can tell you, it's a 6.3 volt, 150 milliamp bulb. Well, in the old days, you could take this to the parts house, and they'd actually search and find what you needed. But different world today. Well, out of disgust, I sort of made a little hack repair concerning the bulb. I took a number 47 standard dial bulb and soldered leads to the end of it and soldered it in place. As you can see here, I normally don't like doing things that way, but sometimes I just get disgusted and do it anyway. And it still works.
Listen, all this is true? Absolutely.
Then you...
Tune in to Sunday Night Gospel with Reverend Peter Bogan. All gospel classics and all by your request. Sunday night, 6 to 10 on the legendary 1290 WNBN.
Okay, that about does it. 1960 Arvin radio back working again. Hope you got something out of all of this, and more to come later. Okay, this is the epitome of console stereo cheapness. I picked this up at one of the resale shops. Actually, I traded the owner an old lower-end Kenwood stereo receiver for this thing that I basically had no money in. I think he was ready to get this thing out of his way. But anyway, this is a Philharmonic console stereo from around 1962. This is a tube-type unit. And what's odd is this only has an AM radio. Now, I've seen phono-only consoles from this time period, and I've seen cheap AM/FM consoles from the 60s, but I don't recall ever seeing an AM-only version. The cabinet's not in too good a shape. I think actually this thing is made out of particle board with some kind of heavy-duty contact paper covering over it, and for some reason somebody removed the device that holds the lid up, but I think we can replace that. And probably the best part about this unit is the Voice of Music record changer. There's our control panel. We have controls for balance, tone, function, stereo, mono, and radio, volume, and tuning. Philharmonic stereophonic high fidelity. Let's take a look at the inside. Here's the chassis, not much to it, just a series string job. There are our puny little AC/DC table radio style output transformers. And our speakers, probably about 6-inch speakers. That's our mixer tube, IF tube, preamp tube, right channel output and left channel output. The rectifier is likely either a selenium rectifier or solid state. And this thing may also have solid state detector diodes in it too. I don't know that yet. Okay, the tube types used are 12BE6, 12BA6, 12AX7, and 35EH5 times 2. 3 of the tubes are branded Philharmonic. These 2 tubes are branded ITT. Now let's give this thing a test run and see what happens. Okay, here's the radio portion. Although not up to snuff, it is passing a signal though.
What were some of the things that you have learned about?
That's the volume wide open.
Kitchen that you maybe didn't realize.
We'll take a small vacation, but it won't be that long. KTLK? All right. Me, Rush. People in Meridian, and or homeless people.
That's 1290 coming in so weak you can't hardly hear it. It should be booming in.
That's why First State Bank offers products and services to fit your busy. With mobile banking, you can bank right from your mobile device.
And you can hear that background squealing.
It's a convenient way to manage your First State Bank accounts. Go to www.firststatebnk.com.
Okay, let's try the phonograph.
Mobile banking. First State Bank.
And that's very distorted. Looks like it could be a defect with the amplifier or a bad cartridge. But first, let's get the amplifier and radio working as it should. So in order to do that, we'll have to pull everything apart. And here's the chassis, and this thing's so cheap that it didn't even have quick connect terminals on the speakers, so I did a slight no-no and just cut the speaker wires. I'll just splice them back when it's time to put everything back together. And this was an antenna lead that solders onto this ferrite bar antenna, and this lead was running around the inside of the cabinet for give the unit a little bit better sensitivity. So now we'll open this up and see what we've got under the chassis. Here's the underside of the chassis, and as you can see, we have a mix of paper capacitors and disc caps. Here's a capacitor here that's blown apart. I believe this is the cathode bypass cap for the output tubes. And here's our rectifier, which is kind of a strange looking device. It was made by Siemens in Germany. I believe I'm reading that correctly, best I can tell. And judging by the way it's testing with the ohm meter, I'm going to say it's a selenium rectifier. It'll probably eventually be replaced. Okay, the first order of business is going to be to clean all these controls and then replace this busted capacitor here. And here's our blown apart capacitor, a Callens brand electrolytic capacitor. 150 microfarad, 15 volts, date code 29th week of 62. I don't have any 150 microfarad caps, but I have 100s and I have 220s. Given the situation, I think we'll go with a 220. It can't hurt. Okay, after replacing the cathode bypass cap, our performance is still crappy. Here's these output tubes. One of them maybe that's just a dirty socket. Okay. Okay, we still have low volume and all of this squealing. So now I'm going to do what any good technician does. Check your power supply voltages. Make sure those are up to snuff. That selenium rectifier could be weak. Okay, checking the output of the selenium rectifier. Under load we have about 116 volts, so that's probably about what it should be. So our selenium rectifier is probably okay. Okay, I've discovered something. Checking the B+ voltage on the IF transformer where it enters into the IF transformer. See, when I touch my meter probe there, it changes the effect on what's going on. And now when I touch my positive meter probe to the B+ input, we have somewhat acceptable performance. Somewhat acceptable, not great performance. Okay, we're checking this 0.05 microfarad cap, which I believe is in the AVC circuit. It appears to be a little bit leaky. Notice the light flashing there. So I think just for the heck of it, we're going to replace that cap and see if our condition improves any. Okay, I just found something interesting. Pulled out the trusty old oscilloscope again, and I'm checking our power supply. Now this filter cap is going bad because I'm hearing some 60-cycle hum in the speaker.
And that's not one of the demands.
This is section number 1 of the filter cap, about 12 volts of ripple there.
Your website.
Section number 2, the blue lead of the filter capacitor. You got some good bit of ripple there too. And now section number 3, the green lead of the filter capacitor. And look at all the garbage there. You can see there's audio riding on the B+. So something is going on here.
I get it. Okay. Oh, we had
okay, I have another cap tacked in, and it looks like that might have helped the problem tremendously.
This is the best of Dave.
Hey, how you doing, Andy? Integrity.
Right, and Jay, the point of being
and there we are on the oscilloscope. All that noise is gone now.
Mandela was very clear what he stood for. Obama, from the best.
See you with ball possession, 27 of the shot.
Okay, the squealing has diminished greatly.
Inbound the ball to Anderson.
But our volume is wide open, and it's not nearly as loud as it should be.
Hands a lot, and he's done a good job.
Somebody who tries to stay up for whatever, or you keep somebody up. We've never dying.
Drives into the lane, gives it a drive.
And as much as you've done it unto the least of one of these, you've done it unto me. You know, the kind of service that... Well, I'm doing a good deed now. Well, I'm giving to the poor now. Now I'm praying.
But now whenever I check on the
sham. That's all hypocrisy. You just live your life and let it...
I'm not getting all that garbage that I was getting before.
And you won't be keeping a record. But I'll guarantee you God keeps a record and not a cut.
Okay, all of our audio stage voltages check okay. And I've eliminated the audio section as the cause of the weak volume by simply switching it to phono and touching the input. It's got plenty enough gain in the audio section, so our low volume problem is due to something in the front end, either in the converter or the IF stage. It could be an alignment issue or weak tube or improper voltage or a combination of all of the above. Okay, tweaking the antenna trimmer on the tuning capacitor helped. as did connecting the set to the outside antenna. But this unit may not always be in a position to be connected to an external antenna, so we want to do what we can to get this thing to perform at its maximum capability.
Of a driver.
Okay, I'm now checking this .05 microfarad cap that was removed from the oscillator and mixer circuit. And as you can see, it's leaky as all get out. So yeah, that could be part of our problem. Okay, here's that capacitor replaced. And I think I spoke in error a little bit earlier whenever I said this particular cap was the AVC cap. The more I look at it, and I don't have a schematic to this, by the way, but the more I look, I think this is the AVC return cap, and if it's bad, obviously it can affect the gain of the front end and the IF stages of the radio. So let's fire it up and see what kind of difference it makes. Okay, that helped some. And I think it also got rid of the last bit of oscillations that we were having.
Down below his waist.
Now I'm actually picking up out-of-town stations without the outside antenna connected.
But claimed by TCU into the lane for a drive by Anderson right down. Boy, nice finish in traffic.
We'll produce some around after this. I'm Andy Dean. We'll be right back.
Okay, we're about out of time for this video, but don't worry, there will be a part 2 very soon, and we'll take care of some last-minute details with this, and then it ought to be done. Okay, thanks for watching, and more to come later.